Imagine living in a world before refrigeration. Leave a piece of meat out in the open for a few hours and it shifts from dinner to biology experiment. And yet there was one kind of meat, corned beef, that survived sea voyages lasting months. No ice. No cooling systems. No magic. Just salt. But not just any salt. These were crystals as large as pebbles, once known as corns of salt. And what makes this even more fascinating is that those salt grains functioned like a team of microscopic engineers, pulling water out of every bacterial cell they encountered. A simple cut of beef could enter a state close to hibernation. It could board a warship, cross violent storms, arrive at port still perfectly edible. The obvious question follows: how could a pile of salt defeat the most powerful force of the era, decay? To understand the strength of those salt grains, we have to step into a world that was, quite literally, foul-smelling. Before the 1900s, every kitchen had a common enemy: bacteria. They waited for no one. Meat separated from the animal could spoil within hours. If you've ever forgotten to refrigerate leftovers overnight and had to throw them out the next morning, imagine living your entire life in a constant state of forgot to refrigerate. That was pre-electric life. As societies expanded, ships began traveling farther. Cities stood hundreds of kilometers from farms. Eating meat immediately after slaughter was no longer practical. Either you found a way to lock time in place, or you resigned yourself to surviving on bread through winter. That's when salt stepped in. Not the fine grains you sprinkle over fried eggs, but massive crystals, sometimes so large they had to be crushed with a hammer. Europeans called them corns. Yes, the very corn that later confused generations into thinking corned beef had something to do with maize. The name is secondary. What truly mattered was this: those large salt grains accomplished what no technology of the time could. They altered the destiny of meat. So how could something as ordinary as salt wield such power? Salt doesn't battle bacteria with force. It uses strategy. It removes water. Bacteria depend on water, just as humans cannot survive long without it. When salt touches meat, it draws water outward through osmosis. If you've ever noticed your skin wrinkle after soaking in seawater, you've experienced the same principle, just far less intensely. In the case of corned beef, the dehydration is strong enough to strip bacteria of the environment they need to multiply. The meat enters a near biological freeze, not at 0 degrees Celsius, but through moisture removal. That's how it survived inside sweltering ship holds, where temperatures could reach 40 degrees Celsius. For humans, that heat is uncomfortable. For fresh meat, it's a bacterial incubator. So when British naval crews in the 18th century opened barrels of beef after 3 months at sea, they didn't find liquefied ruin. They found meat that still held its shape. The principle sounds cold, but it's simple. Remove water. Remove risk. Yet this immortal meat relied on more than salt. It also depended on its shape. The strange trapezoid shape of the corned beef can isn't the result of artistic design. It has military logic behind it. Anyone seeing a corned beef can for the first time usually asks, why not make it rectangular? The answer leads straight back to wooden warships of the British Navy. When transporting thousands of rations for long voyages, every centimeter of space mattered. Trapezoid cans could be packed tightly together, leaving almost no wasted space. If you've ever played Tetris and tried to fill every gap to clear a line, this was the real-world version. Except it happened on the ocean. A ship could carry 20–30% more cans with that design. The percentage sounds modest, but on a 6-month voyage, it could determine survival. The shape also made it easier to push the meat out of metal molds during 19th century production. Processing plants didn't have automated assembly lines. They needed containers that were durable and practical. Square molds jammed. Round cans wasted space. The trapezoid prevailed. That unusual form survives today as a relic of naval logistics. You might be eating a simple pantry staple, but the can itself carries the DNA of maritime empires. Still, The deepest reason corned beef spread worldwide isn't confined to shipholds or kitchens. It lies in the larger story salt helped write for human history. How did a time-resistant food become a foundation of global expansion? Corned beef wasn't merely durable, it symbolized humanity's ability to overcome biological limits. As the British extended their sea routes, they needed food that wouldn't betray them, food that wouldn't rot, wouldn't weaken, wouldn't lose nutritional value after months at sea. Protein-rich rations fueled soldiers, sailors, and colonial laborers. The simple fact that a piece of meat could last 3 to 6 months shifted the balance of power. It sounds minor until you try keeping fresh food safe for even a week without refrigeration. That longevity enabled longer voyages, broader trade routes, and sustained military campaigns far from home. Eventually, corned beef crossed oceans again, this time with immigrants. It embedded itself into American cuisine, then traveled onward to the Caribbean, Hong Kong, and the Philippines. Wherever there was a need for food that was convenient, flavorful, and long-lasting, corned beef took root. So from a slab of meat buried in salt to escape bacteria, it became proof of something larger. Sometimes what changes the world isn't futuristic technology, but an ancient technique clever enough to outwit time itself. If you enjoy uncovering old technologies that sound simple, yet quietly reshaped history, stay with this channel. The next story might reveal another everyday food invented for a reason no one would ever guess. Follow along, you might be surprised.